We meet South Jersey's newest state senator and how he plans to build on the work of the late Senator Jim Whalen. Plus, we discuss why preserving New Jersey's wildlife is important for all of us. It's all here on the next Latino Motion. Join us.
Choose to get lost in the woods to gain experience in forest management.
Choose to travel through time to understand the past.
Choose to soar to pursue a career in dance.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation, and Stockton University. This edition of Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is brought to you by the HD Studios at the campus of Stockton University. Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas. Welcome to Latino Motion, a weekly interview show highlighting issues impacting New Jersey's Latino community while advancing understanding of Latino cultural heritage and contributions to our society. And here is your host, Bert Lopez.
Buenos dias and welcome to Latino Motion. State Senator Jim Whalen was a friend and a remarkable leader in New Jersey. He was a champion of Atlantic City and Atlantic County, and he will sorely be missed. Filling his unexpired term in the New Jersey State Senate is Colin Bell, and he happens to be right here with us. Senator Bell, welcome to Latino Motion.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I know that Senator Whalen was a friend of yours as well, and certainly someone that was so good for South Jersey. Tell me a little bit about what he meant to you.
Well, Senator Whalen was a great friend. He was my mentor in politics. He's the person I went to when I first ran for office, when I ran for freeholder. In fact, he convinced me to run for freeholder in the first place. And he's really someone that always put the interests of his constituents first and always did what he thought was right, even when it wasn't the easy thing, even if it wasn't the most politically expedient thing. He stood up for Atlantic City and Atlantic County and got a lot done for our area in Trenton. So it's big shoes to fill.
Very big shoes to fill. Let's talk about some of the projects and some of the initiatives that he was pursuing, and tell me where you stand on them.
Well, certainly I know that he was ecstatic to see Stockton break ground in Atlantic City, yes, along with South Jersey Gas and Hard Rock coming into Atlantic City. Were all things that Senator Whalen fought for a long time to get done. I think those things are great, but there's more to be done. We have to continue to help diversify the economy in our area if we want to turn things around, create jobs, keep people in their homes. And the key to that is out at the airport, doing some more with aviation, aircraft maintenance, and those sort of things. I think that is our top priority that Senator Whalen had started that I want to keep moving along in the state Senate.
What are some of the new things that you like to propose?
Well, one of the things that I think we need to address in this state is, we saw what happened down in Charlottesville with
Yes.
the disgusting behavior that went on down there, and someone unfortunately lost their life. And I think New Jersey law needs to be updated so that we have a domestic terrorism crime on our books that can be used to prosecute those sort of offenses. Going back to my time as a prosecutor, I looked at our criminal code and I see a hole there that I think needs to be filled right away. Hopefully we never have an incident like that here, but if we do, I want to make sure that our prosecutors and our police have the tools to put those people behind bars where they belong.
So you have the background, obviously, in law. You're an attorney as well. Tell me a little bit more about your career.
I grew up in Hamilton Township. I went away for college and law school. I came back. I worked in the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office for a few years. I prosecuted mostly narcotics distribution. After I left the prosecutor's office, I went in with a private law firm in Atlantic City, where I still am.
Why do you think you could make a difference as a state senator?
Well, I think I have a record as a freeholder here in Atlantic County. I accomplished some things in terms of advocating for Sandy victims and veterans, and making sure there was more transparency in government, and helping to get money out of politics in Atlantic County. And I want to take those same fights to Trenton. I think I can make a difference there with our colleagues in the legislature, and fight for the things that we need down here in Atlantic City and Atlantic County.
Well, thank you. We're going to just take a quick break. We'll continue the discussion. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion. Welcome back to Latino Motion as we continue our discussion with Senator Bell, who is filling in for the unexpired term of the late Senator Jim Wellen. Senator, welcome back to Latino Motion. And we were talking about some of the things that you're going to follow in the same vein as the late Senator Wellen. And certainly one of the things that he was a champion now was Atlanta City and helping the plight of Atlanta City. What do you stand in that regard?
Well, certainly Atlantic City's had some issues. Its budget needed to be right-sized. There's no argument about that. But I know one of the things that Senator Whalen fought for, that I will continue to fight for, is that Atlantic City sent a lot of money around the state for a lot of years while the gaming industry was thriving. And now that Atlantic City needs help, we need to make sure that some of that money is coming back to Atlantic City to help its citizens, help its schools, and help its businesses recover. You
have your own passion and some of your own issues that you like to champion for. What would some of those issues be?
Well, I think one of the big issues down here in Atlantic County is access to health care for women and children. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, a son and a daughter, and we need to make sure that our children here have access to the health care that they need. Unfortunately, over the last 8 years, a lot of funding for women's and children's health care has been vetoed out of the budget on a line item veto. The only Planned Parenthood clinic in Atlantic County closed, and we see women having to travel a great distance in order to get the basic health care that they need. And that's something I'm going to fight to make sure that we have the proper funding for here in Atlantic County for our citizens.
And obviously what's happening in the nation in terms of the Affordable Care Act and what's going to happen there, the future's sort of uncertain in that regard right now.
Absolutely, and some of these proposed cuts to Medicaid affect our most vulnerable populations, seniors who are in need nursing home care, and children that have debilitating illnesses or were born with birth defects. That's the main populations that Medicaid cuts, and those are the two populations that we should protect the most, not that we should be looking to cut medical care for.
Of course, one of the issues that a lot of people have is how much they have to pay in terms of taxes for the schools, and obviously we need to provide the resources needed to educate our kids. Tell me where you stand in that regard.
Well, we're certainly fighting for greater education funding. We saw finally Atlantic County get some additional education funding this year, about $8.4 million. But we need to make sure that funding is being reallocated from some districts that no longer need assistance, like Hoboken and some areas in North Jersey that have seen economic recovery. And that is redirected back down here to Atlantic County, especially in Egg Harbor Township and Hamilton Township, where there's been mandated growth, but they haven't gotten any additional school funding. We have to make sure that kids who are going to our schools are taken care of, that they're not hungry when they come to school, that they have a safe place to sleep at night so that they can learn and go on to productive lives. Because if we don't help them early on, it leads to a cycle that is not only bad for the child, but more expensive for the taxpayer.
Well, as a former school board member and president of school board in Atlanta City, that's very important. It's very important that we have the needed resources for our kids.
Absolutely. If we're not doing things to help our children, then I don't know what we're all doing here.
Senator, thank you. Those are very important issues. But stay tuned. We're going to talk a little more. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion as we continue our discussion with Senator Colin Bell, representing New Jersey District 2. And Senator, we're talking about some of the very important initiatives that are important to you and to all of us. Let's talk about some of the issues that are important to the Latino community. And one of them is the Dreamers, and those are individuals who came here as children. Obviously, there is the DACA, the federal level, but there's some things that could happen here in the state level. Tell me about some of those.
Absolutely. I'm concerned, as many people are, about taking children who came here when they were very young through no fault of their own, and splitting families apart and sending children back to a country that they might not remember, where they have no family and may not even speak the language. So that's not the right thing to do, and we need to fight against that in New Jersey. And here on the state level, making sure that those children have access to education, both primary and at the higher education levels. Studies have shown that these children are hard workers, that they want to be educated, that they're productive members of society, that they're paying taxes. So it benefits us all to make sure that they have access to quality education so they continue to be the productive members of society that they've proven to be so far.
And I know one of the other issues that is kind of controversial, but it's been talked a lot about, is issuing licenses for undocumented. Is something that Ambassador Murphy has supported, and there's kind of some support for that. Tell me where you stand on that issue.
Well, I think we all have an interest in making sure that everyone who is behind the wheel of a car in this state, whether they're documented or not, knows how to drive, has been tested and can pass a test, and that they carry insurance. Because if you get in an accident with someone, you're looking at the other person's policy to make sure that your medical treatment is taken care of, that your car is repaired. And if we have people driving around who have no driver's test and no insurance coverage, that's a risk to themselves, but it's a risk to everybody else in the state. So we should all be looking for people to make sure that everyone is licensed and insured.
Let's talk about criminal justice reform. What's your stand on that?
I think criminal justice reform is an important issue. We've made some progress here. We're past the days of long mandatory minimum sentences, especially for substance abuse and those sort of issues. And we now know that getting someone into treatment instead of incarcerating them for a long period of time is not only the moral right thing to do, but it's, in the long term, the economically smart thing to do, because getting someone treatment, teaching them a trade, getting them back out to become productive members of society is better for the taxpayer in the long run, in addition to being the right thing to do.
And as attorney, you know that there's a big disparity in terms of who gets those long terms, and it's usually minorities, it's usually Latinos and African Americans.
Absolutely. Study after study has shown that. So criminal justice reform, like I said, is not only the economic thing to do, but it's the right thing morally, and it's the right thing constitutionally to make sure that all of our citizens are treated equally, no matter the color of their skin.
Well, thank you for sharing all this information. A lot of good stuff that you're working on. Appreciate you sharing that with our audience.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion. Welcome back to Latino Motion. New Jersey is home to a variety of wildlife, and one organization that is dedicated to preserving that characteristic of the state is Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey. Joining me is Ben Worth to discuss the important work of this organization. Ben, welcome to Latino Motion.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Ben, you are the Habitat Program Manager, so obviously you do a lot of work in terms of preserving the habitat for a lot of the wildlife. Tell me what your organization's engaged in terms of preserving wildlife in New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, we're a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to protecting New Jersey's rare wildlife, and we do that through a variety of different ways. Mm-hmm. We have conservation projects where, they're species-oriented projects. We work with anything from eastern tiger salamanders to bald eagles. And we also have projects where we work to enhance habitat for wildlife because that's what they need to survive. We also have many different education programs as well, too, that we have, like Species on the Edge, which is an art and essay contest to involve children who are our future. And that's basically the core belief of our organization, too, is to keep New Jersey's wildlife in our future for our children as well.
Yeah, the education component is so important, right? So that people are aware, hey, we do have an issue with preserving our wildlife, and certainly getting the youth involved is very critical. Let's talk about who is in danger, what kind of wildlife is endangered. I know there's a couple of lists. There's probably a federal list, and there's a bunch of lists. But tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, in New Jersey, we have over 80 species that are listed as endangered and threatened in New Jersey. And, more so, there are some as well that are listed as special concern. And they run the gamut, from invertebrates, like the bronze copper, which is like a butterfly, to the bald eagle, which we know, nationwide as a symbol of America. And, also small little critters like, like some frogs and toads, like the pine barrens tree frog, and then little salamanders, like I mentioned before, the eastern tiger salamander.
And I know you have an affinity for the osprey, and
Yes.
the organization has made tremendous efforts to preserve their habitat from small numbers to great numbers. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, ospreys are one of these species that, they really set the tone for how the environment really has improved, from, the, say, mid-1950s, or the mid-1900s, where, down back then, they only were numbered around 50 pairs, and where today we have over 500 nesting pairs in the state. And, and that mainly has to do with just the, the improvement in like air quality and water quality throughout New Jersey with environmental regulations set in place, and also just from preserving habitat for them to nest, because these days they nest mostly on man-made platforms out on the salt marsh, which is mostly preserved throughout the coast of New Jersey.
It's very critical that we preserve that habitat, and obviously we'll all play a role in that, and as well as the great work that your organization does. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Latino Motion. Welcome back to Latino Motion. We continue our discussion with Ben Wirtz on the importance of preserving New Jersey's wildlife. And Ben, we were talking about all the great work you do, and certainly the fact that preserving habitat is so very important, and something that your organization is very engaged, but all of us play a role in that. Tell me what we can do to preserve wildlife habitat.
Yeah, definitely. To preserve wildlife at home, I mean, there's many different things a homeowner could do. One of them is basically just by landscaping using native species. Those provide adequate food during the right time of year for wildlife, especially even pollinators. We don't realize, many people, when you go to the grocery store, that when you go get that food, we need pollinators to make that food, to make that. And, without them, we'll obviously be very hungry. But, were you at home, you could plant flowering plants, to help provide, nectar for these pollinators and everything. And also you could plant trees and shrubs that provide fruit for, migratory birds, specifically songbirds. And, you could do many other things as far as even like putting in ponds, and you could really go crazy with, providing more than just food, supplementary food by like, means of like seed, for birds.
Obviously, there's so much development, taking away habitat, so it's important that we could at least contribute a little bit to encourage the habitat, even in our own backyards. That's a great thing. Part of the problem is pollution, obviously, and we could all play a role.
Oh, definitely.
In terms of recycling and other things like that, correct?
Oh, yeah, and that's even just going out, we are consumers, so when you go out and go shopping, to, try not to use single-use plastics, as much as possible. You don't think about it when you, might go to the grocery store to get that, single-use bag at the checkout there, but, you don't really know where that might end up, even if you throw it out or you try to recycle it. Could fall out of the back of a truck, and that it could end up, in an osprey nest, and it could possibly, entangle a bird or go over its head to kind of smother it. And even just like fishing line as well, too, is another thing. I find in osprey nests, along with many other things as far as like flip-flops and, and you name it, so just being more responsible when, we do our daily, we live in our daily lives,
So much that we could do, and certainly one of the things we could also donate to organizations such as yours. We'll put up the website, but you also need volunteers, correct?
Oh yeah, I mean, I tell people how many Osprey platforms I've put up, but I've never done them myself single-handedly, so that's where we always need volunteers to help with that. With other volunteer events that we have as well, on the Delaware Bay Shore, we definitely always need help, and those come from all of our great volunteers that we get.
So to volunteer, we can also get that information on the website, and you could sign up to do some of this great work, and they'll certainly find something to do if you're willing to volunteer.
Oh, for sure.
All right. Thank you so much. This is very vital information for all of us here in New Jersey. And thank you for joining us once again here on Latino Motion.
Choose to get your feet wet, to learn more about protecting our environment.
Choose to read minds, to understand the human brain.
Choose to get your hands dirty, to create a masterpiece.
Stockton University offers 50 high-quality academic programs, small class sizes, and affordable tuition. Choose to match your interests and talents at one of New Jersey's nationally ranked universities.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.